Welcome to the Lifetime at Work podcast, episode 21. My name is Greg Martin, and I'm an entrepreneur based in Toronto where I own and run a food business called Farmer Prepared Meals. But my career didn't start here. In my spare time, I record this podcast where I like to explore other people and their careers. I talk to people from all backgrounds to tell the real stories about their jobs and why they do them. For you, it's a chance to meet different people, and if I'm doing my job right, who knows? Their stories may inspire your life or your future career in some way. And in this episode, I'm talking to someone who is blazing a trail as a young person in the world of virtual business consulting. Let's play the intro music and get going. If you're a fan of the podcast, check out lifetimeatwork.com to follow everything that's going on and listen to all the back episodes. You can also follow me on Instagram. I am gregmartin.work. This podcast is brought to you by Farmer Prepared Meals. It is the prepared meals company that I help run and own. If you're interested in trying some of our meals, you can use the promo code IKnowGreg and get a discount. There are some amazing things we've got. We're always cooking new things in the kitchen. We're all restaurant chefs and trying to make just really good food for people that is affordable and take it home and just easy to reheat when you need it. So go to farmr.ca to learn more. And again, use that promo code IKnowGreg to save a bit on your first order. In this episode, I am talking to a young entrepreneur. She hasn't been at it that long, and so I was even a little bit reluctant to even have her on the podcast in the first place until I began to hear the story and began to talk to her and realized just all the cool things that she's sort of onto. After being laid off, Brianna Coon, who I have on the podcast this week, basically started her own business and did it with low overhead and really just consulting with starting with one company and just sort of started to build it up and began doing really what she could do for other companies. And so it's a cool story, I think, because there's sort of two components going on here. There's one where she's not highly educated. She didn't go to school for a ton. She didn't really go to school for this per se. She took a few courses and learned it on her own, which is really cool. And I think admirable, but not only, I think, just effective in seeing what she can do now, but then also kind of in the embracing of the work from home and virtual work and all those things. It's just part of what she is and where she is and with her company now and growing it is that she's just, in the right place, but also just this area that is set to grow, which is the virtual assistant, virtual business consulting, social media help, all that stuff. Anyway, she was about to explain it. It's a great story she has for herself and also pretty cool how she's helping a lot of small businesses out there. So with that, here is my interview with Brianna Coon. Brianna, welcome to the Lifetime at Work podcast.
Well, thank you very much for having me.
Can you start by just giving a quick background on yourself, how you got here and what you do?
Yeah, of course. Well, it's definitely been a whirlwind getting to where I am today. So I started my company in December of 2019, and it just kind of happened very quickly, and I'll go into a little bit of detail about that. I actually worked in real estate for about 5 years. I worked in new home sales, and I worked with a couple home builders in Edmonton, Alberta, and even that kind of came out of nowhere as well. I had finished high school and I wasn't really sure what I wanted to do with my life. And I was working 4 jobs at one point. I had just moved out of my parents' house and I was sick and tired of working in the hospitality industry and retail. And I literally applied to probably close to 100 jobs on Indeed just to get a big girl job is what I called it. And I wanted to focus on a career that I could build and, learn a lot of different skills. And the first company to call me back was a new home builder. and I started there very green. I didn't really know anything about sales or building a house for that matter. And I ended up working in new home sales for about 4 years. And I worked my way from the very bottom all the way up. And I had key roles with the marketing team and the procurement team, and created a lot of strategies for social media marketing that the company still uses today. And, near the end of my time with the home builders, I just had this feeling that I wasn't satisfied, or, that spark wasn't lighting up for me anymore. And I knew there was something more out there for me. So, but I loved real estate. So again, I was on the search for, something different. And I ended up moving into commercial real estate. And I worked there for about 3.5 months. And it was a new role for that brokerage. And in 2019, near the end of the year, the economic climate in Alberta drastically changed. And unfortunately, they had to lay me off. The brokerage was going through some downsizing. I had only ever been, let go from a job once before. And it was kind of traumatizing. It's that rejection. And you feel like you did something wrong. But again, I was looking, for something that could fulfill what I was looking for. And I went on a couple job interviews, and nothing was really, ticking off all those boxes for me. And I actually had an interview with a realtor at a brokerage in downtown Edmonton, and he offered me the job, and it was like a team coordinator, executive assistant sort of role. But he wanted me to work as a subcontractor. And that was very different than anything I had heard before. And I started looking into it. And the way he was going about it wasn't really, correct. It was kind of in that gray area, but that's what sparked that idea for me. And my parents have been in the finance industry for 25 plus years. So I talked to them about it. And, I did the employee versus, subcontractor test with the CRA, and it didn't quite, fit what the role was and what he was asking for. And so I told him, thank you very much for the opportunity, but I'm not comfortable with that. And then I started to look into subcontracting and what all that entailed. And as I looked deeper into it, it started checking off all of those boxes for me. And, I Googled like virtual assistants and online business manager. And I had all these skills that I have learned through the years of real estate and doing sales and being face to face with customers. And I had just had this idea, like, I'm going to take the risk on myself, and I'm going to give myself a year and see what I can do with this. And so in a matter of 2 weeks, I started my business. It was a lot of long nights, but I wanted to launch January 1st, 2020. And honestly, I have not looked back, and I didn't put, any expectations on it or limitations. And I just said, what, I'm just going to run with it and see where it takes me. And I am so grateful that I decided to take that risk and believe in myself. Because I wouldn't be where I am today if I hadn't.
So maybe describe a little bit of what you do. Like, what's your pitch then to a new potential client on what you can do for them?
Yeah. So I never really resonated with the title of virtual assistant. So I kind of created my own title, and it's called a virtual business consultant and social media strategist. So the whole premise of my company and what I do, as well as my team, is that we help small to medium-sized businesses and fellow entrepreneurs with their day-to-day tasks that they either just don't have time for, or they don't have the skill set to complete. So we do a lot of digital tasks, such as building online courses, setting up those automatic workflows, social media, marketing, there's such a wide range of different tasks that I help business owners with. And
Yeah.
I'm so grateful because I work with a wonderful team of women. I have 5 other subcontractors on my team that they all have, specific strengths. So I have a girl who's like my tech wizard, and she does all of the technical stuff. And then I have a graphic designer, I have a content and copywriter, and then I have an administration girl who is like a goddess when it comes to Excel. And for myself, I love the strategy. So how I've kind of shifted my business now is instead of me doing all the actual building of everything, I actually subcontract that out to my team and then I focus on the actual strategy and the client facing meetings. And I help business owners, create different revenues of income for themselves, especially with COVID-19. A lot of my clients, they were very nervous. And they weren't sure because what was going to happen with their business, because a lot of it is, in-person stuff and event-based things. And it's hard because, COVID restricted all of that. So a lot of my clients had to pivot. And, I'm so grateful that I was able to be there for them and help them create, these different online courses and products that they can sell to replace the income that they lost because of the pandemic.
So I guess the idea then is there's someone who has a business, whatever it could be, a small business of some small, medium-sized business, as you characterized it, and they may be really good at something that is the trade or the activity. Say real estate is the example, but there is all this online component, and it's not build me a website stuff. It is media marketing and managing things online, creating social media platforms, admin stuff, all that sort of stuff. And you can help with that. It's kind of like, hey, you focus on your day job, what you're good at, what you're trying to do in terms of the client focus, et cetera. And I will handle more of the back end stuff. And it may be different than what you may hire an agency for, say, or what you hired an agency for in the back end. Is that a decent characterization of it?
Yeah, exactly. And honestly, like it comes down to, letting me work in your business so you can work on your business.
Right.
And I find, entrepreneurs, when they're in that growth period where they're not quite at the point where they can hire a part-time or a full-time employee, but they still need help with those tasks that are, take a lot of time. And social media is one of those. And I love social media. I'm a total nerd when it comes to the analytics and all of that behind the scenes stuff and the numbers. Yeah. And a lot of that is really overwhelming to business owners because, it's kind of like a science, and understanding it takes practice, and they just don't want to deal with it. Yeah. So like I have clients that come to me who they just want coaching with social media and how they can, make their marketing strategy better. Or I have clients that come to me who are literally, here's my username, here's my password, you do it. I don't have time for it.
Yeah, some may just hate it. I find I actually go in and out of hating it. And you're like, well, I like this business, I want to do this, but I can't ignore social media as a way to generate leads and connect with my potential customers or actual customers or whatever it is. But I don't like doing it, or I don't want to do it, so I need help. Right? It's like super common, I feel.
Yeah.
Like. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And I find that, a lot of people get frustrated because they feel like they're doing all the right things, but they're not getting the results that they're looking for. Yeah, whether it's impressions or like the leads calling them, right?
Yeah. Okay. So take it back to then, you finishing school, deciding that, hey, I want a real, I think you said a big person job.
Yeah.
And like, how was that in terms of thinking through what you wanted to do? Like, what was the big person life that you were thinking about and that you felt like you needed from that job that wasn't in retail or whatever the traditional kind of roles paths were?
Well, I'll even take it a step further back. I love animals, and growing up, really the only job that I could associate with being around animals all day was a veterinarian.
Yeah.
And for many, many years, I would tell everyone I was going to be a veterinarian one day and all of this stuff. And then going into high school and realizing, academically, I didn't really fit in the school system in a sense where the structure of teaching didn't fit my learning style. So I struggled really hard through school, and kind of having that realization of I don't think I can make it through veterinary school, or going into a post-secondary environment. I don't think that it would be a good place for me. And so I kind of had a loss of identity a little bit, because I truly had no idea what I wanted to do.
Yeah.
And, I tried, like, I took a 2-year animal sciences diploma online, and that was hard to get through. And it took me a lot longer than 2 years to finish it.
Yeah.
And so going from there, it was really hard to kind of figure out what it was that I wanted to do. And I think that's why I decided to work so many different jobs at one time, because I wanted to have different experiences and figure out, what kind of industry I liked the best. And I worked as a waitress. I worked at a doggy daycare. I was a receptionist at a spa. I also worked for a nonprofit. And honestly, I wasn't happy. Like, I was pretty much working every day, and not sleeping a lot because I was working so much, and I just got so sick of it.
Yeah.
And, I think also too, growing up, I'm 25 now, and looking back at it, I think my idea of success was, seeing all the big wigs downtown in suits and driving nice cars, and, that kind of materialistic view of success.
Right.
And I think at that point, that was kind of how I kind of viewed being, like having a big lifestyle. And so I was trying to figure out, how do I do that with no post-secondary education, and do it in a sense that I could get there very quickly.
Yeah.
And, working in new home sales, like, there is a potential to make a lot of money. But it just didn't fulfill what I was looking for. And trying to find, those little things that lit up that passion for me. And when I was in new home sales, it was the face-to-face with customers, and that transformation when, starting with them from the very beginning to handing them their keys and seeing that accomplishment and them reaching that goal.
Yeah.
And in my business now, it's still that transformation, and where my client is reaching a goal and they're accomplishing something they didn't think they would be able to in a certain amount of time. That is where my passion is helping people realize the potential in themselves and their dreams and their goals. That's what makes me wake up in the morning.
It's actually interesting that you say that. I'm drawing these parallels with people who are saying, maybe they're working in their own business or have a job that they're doing, but there's these components of it that they don't like, and just say, hey, well, outsource that to someone else and you'll be happier. Like, you don't have to begrudgingly do these things that you don't want to do. There's someone else there that actually really likes them. And you can find, well, why not? Like, why not? And even if you have a full corporate job, like, there's components of your job in theory that you could just have someone else do. It's kind of the idea, even though it's not maybe say a full-time job. Okay, fine. You don't have to pay them a full-time salary. You could pay them just a part of it. So I kind of like that sort of angle, but also to kind of follow up on what you were saying. I think it's interesting the way we think about what we want to do with our lives based on our interests, and it's kind of the way that we are taught. I think from a young age, it's like, hey, well, if you like something a lot, just go into that field. But in reality, there's not a lot of people who I think grow up really loving oil and gas and the gas part of a car, or how, motors work or whatever. But there's so many people that go into the oil and gas industry, to use an Alberta
Yeah.
example, and it doesn't mean that they have this huge passion for it. It's something different. And they like a component of that job for other reasons. And it's just, I think, thinking about it differently, which maybe you have done, as potentially the soft skills. Do you think that it's the soft
Hmm.
skills of your job that you get to do, not, hey, I'm around people and these businesses that I enjoy? It's less of that. It's more, I like presenting, or I like the analytical part of this, or I like the sales interaction, or I like the people, or, it's these like soft skill components of it that you probably should actually be looking for. And you're not necessarily looking for that, but that can actually mean a lot of your job fulfillment that you might get, is just getting in a position where you can use some of these skills and feel good about them and be rewarded for that, and help a business in any way, or help a company achieve something, because you're able to flex those soft skills and work on them in your role. Does that resonate with you? Did you find that as
Yeah,
being
totally.
more fulfilling? Yeah, okay, yeah.
Yeah, and I've always had y- like anything that I wanted to learn and that I was passionate about, I would do. And there's so many different things that I've picked up in all the different roles that I've had in my adult life that, a lot of people don't necessarily come in contact with in a normal like office job, for example. And with the way that the world is going, in a sense of everything is becoming more virtual and online, there is so much opportunity um, to have a digital presence and have a strong one and be able to have an impactful career and build your business online. And people refer it to as the gig economy. And, I think even before the pandemic happened, like I had noticed the shift of people starting to migrate more online, and the in-person stuff was starting to slow down a little bit, because when you're online, like there is millions of people that you can reach. And then when the pandemic hit, it just, everyone had to make that shift and everyone kind of panicked. Um, but I think now that everyone's kind of settled into it, there's such a bigger market for businesses to reach out to that they wouldn't necessarily have if they were still storefront facing or doing those live in-person events.
Going back, and I'll tie this in, but going back to being laid off, there's a feeling of rejection. I think you mentioned, I was laid off once, definitely felt that. Were you scared of something, or what kind of scared you about being laid off, if anything?
Honestly, like my first thought was money.
Yeah.
And I think that's usually everyone's kind of first thought is, oh my God, like, what am I going to do? I'm not going to have a paycheck. Like, I need to find something. And how am I going to pay my bills? But it was a sense of, I was ashamed. Like, I felt like I had failed.
Yeah, yeah.
And I was very embarrassed. And, as soon as it happened, I just kind of sat there and I was like, oh my God, like, what am I going to tell my boyfriend? What am I going to tell my parents? Like, this is so embarrassing. Like,
Yeah.
I'm a failure. Like, how could I get laid off? Right. And it's all those questions are running through your mind. And I just jumped in my car and just started crying and driving home. And it was, you know, I threw myself a pity party for a day or two. And I'll be totally honest, it was kind of depressing.
Yeah.
And then I just kind of had that shift, whereas, okay, this happened. It sucks, but I'm an adult. I have to, pull up my bootstraps and figure it out and find something else, and you move on.
Are you happy that it happened now?
Oh yeah, when I look
Yeah.
back at it now, it's a blessing in disguise.
Yeah.
And when I look at how I was overall in that role, I wasn't happy. And it was not something that fit what I wanted in my life. And I'm kind of that person where I suck it up. And so I know if I wouldn't have gotten laid off, I would have worked that job for probably a couple of years until I
Yeah.
just had enough.
And that's the thing that you kind of need to do. You can't have a resume with, oh, I worked here for 3 months and tried it and didn't like it. That's just, you become unemployable at a certain point. You kind of have to stick it out unless there's a really good reason not to. And there's that on top of
Mhm.
just wanting to be wanted. I mean, it's same thing. You're in a relationship or you go on a date. I mean, you want the other person to like you, even if you don't like them, right? Like, it's not, you
Exactly.
want to be
Yeah.
wanted. It's not like you can just leave it. And so it's challenging, I think, when you the same thing happened to me. I mean, all the same emotions that you were having. I mean, it's hard not to feel defeated and unsuccessful and a failure, at least for a short time. And
Yeah.
you could, and it's sort of how you dwell on it, but then you look back on it and you talk to most people who are now in some situation, and it's pretty rare that they say, oh, I that was the best job, that was the job of my life, like, if only I wasn't laid off. Like that, I feel like that is a lot more rare than what you're saying of, what, it was a good thing, it gave
Yeah.
me the kick in the pants to now do the thing that I really wanted to do, or find the thing that I really now want to do, which is good. Just hard to see it at the time when you're in it.
Yeah. And it's hard not to take it personally, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
And my circumstances, it was the economy.
Right.
And, it wasn't anything to do with me. It was business. And it's hard to kind of like look at it that way, like right when it happens and like take that step back.
Yeah. And so now, I guess, then coming up with your new role, or just the idea of starting a company yourself, what was the fears that, like, how did what you're scared about change, or did they, because obviously it's tough to go and say, I'm going to start this brand new job, especially if you hadn't been thinking about it your whole life. It's one thing if you
Yeah.
if you had been like, okay, I'm set, I'm a veterinarian, I know all this, I'm going to start my vet business, I'm qualified, etc. That's one thing. But you were effectively starting a business that you didn't know whether there was a market for, or didn't know for sure that you would have any clients, etc., etc. Was that part scary for you?
It was, a lot of uncertainty. And I look back at it now, and it's honestly like when I was in that space of, okay, I'm going to take this opportunity and I'm just going to bet it all on me. And I was scared, but I wasn't scared. It was very interesting because I just had this knowingness, I guess you could say, that it would work out. And whether it was going to be something that was just steady or what it has grown to now, I didn't really put, a lot of expectations on it. I just said that it's going to work out the way it's going to work out.
Yeah.
And I did a lot of research. I took a course from a lady based in the US, who, similar thing. She, full-time job, wasn't happy. She actually quit, and started as a virtual assistant. And now she's teaching, virtual assistants how to create their companies and stuff like that. And I, I took the course, and it was like a learn at your own pace sort of thing. And I flew through it, and I basically just set myself up. And because I had such a vast network of people that I knew from all the different roles, I just asked, and I reached out and said, hey, like, this is something I'm doing now. I'd love to see if there's an opportunity for me to help you in your business. Um, and I think that's my biggest advice I would say to people is, you don't know unless you ask.
Yeah.
And that was one of the things that, really helped me in the beginning, is just reaching out. And I was shocked to see how many people who were kind of silently struggling with their business, and they didn't really want to, ask for help. Because I feel like with our society, it's becoming less and less now, but everyone in the entrepreneurial kind of community, it's all about the hustle and the grind. And I've never really resonated with those
Right.
words because I feel like there's such a negative kind of connotation that comes with that, that
Yeah.
if you're not hustling or grinding every day, you're not a success and you're not trying hard enough.
It's yeah, it's that whole thing about whoever works the hardest will clearly be the most successful in their business. And it doesn't really work like that. It's not like, hey, he or she is the richest and the most, it has the best business because they worked 120 hours every week. It actually doesn't work like that, despite maybe
Yeah.
what we sort of think. There's actually a smarter way to do it, and maybe we should aspire to be the person who, and do you even need that? Do you even need to be the biggest business or the best business, or whatever that is? Maybe you could just be have the most controlled business, the most worthwhile and the most efficient, but not necessarily squeaking out every single dime over every hour, but just being efficient with it. I think part of what you're saying is something that people
Yeah.
should kind of think about. How do you be smarter about it so you can really get the things that you want out of your business, which aren't always money, or aren't all, sometimes it's time and flexibility and other soft things like that.
Yeah, exactly. And I see it all the time. Like I have one client, for example, her business started from a hobby, and she owns a bakery, and she just started baking cakes for her friends for baby showers and stuff like that, and it's turned into this huge company where she's very well known in Edmonton and area, and it's her baby.
Mhm.
And we started talking around Halloween, and it wasn't until end of January that she finally came to me and was like, I'm ready for the help.
Yeah.
And I get that. I even went through that, where I was getting to the point where I had so much client work where I was working 18-hour days. I had sold every hour of my day, and I needed help, and I needed to bring those people in my team.
Right.
And as soon as that happened, like, my business again just took that another growth spurt.
Yeah. What do you think are the options out there for people, and how do you think about a role where you're working for someone, you have the security of that, you have a steady paycheck and all those sorts of things. Just, yeah, again, just the security, or the lack of worry, I guess I'd say, or versus doing something on your own where you don't know if you're going to get a client, you don't know if you're going to lose a client, where the business relies on you. Maybe talk a little bit about just that, and the trade-offs, I guess,
Yeah.
for both, because there's definitely benefits. I think there's definitely benefits of working for a company and not having to worry about things that you may have to if it's your own business.
Yeah, I totally get that. The financial security is a huge aspect for people. For me, when I started my business, I had a substantial amount of debt. And that was something that was on the back of my mind of, oh my God, like, am I able to do this with this debt and still pay my bills that come in every month? And that was a huge thing for me, where the paycheck to paycheck like employee role was comfortable, and it allowed me to you know sleep at night, in a sense, where I wasn't concerned that I was going to be able to make ends meet at the end of the month. And that was a huge thing with starting my business is, am I going to be able to make this work where I'm able to have that same sense of financial security? And there is resources out there. Like, we're very fortunate to live in Canada, where there's a lot of benefits for small time business owners. And you know I'm very thankful for my parents as well. They always, well, with them being in the financial industry, growing up in that environment of how to be smart with your money and stuff like that. And it's I think the biggest thing too is having a support network and your friends and family to encourage you to keep going. But also too, asking for help when you are starting a business. Like, you don't have to do it alone. Like, there is people like myself that can help you set up your business so that you can be successful.
And just I think of it a lot of ways of de-risking it. Chances are you're going to be
Yeah.
good at something. You're going to have a skill set. You're not going to have all the skill sets per se to be able to succeed in a business or on your own, but then go and seek help or go and hire someone who has those other skills. And over time, maybe you learn them and you get better and you don't need to, but chances are that other person's going to like it. They're going to be better at it. They're going to go and do that thing for you while you can focus on the thing that you're good at. And hopefully that's something that it can be rewarded and that people are willing to pay for and that you can actually start a business. But that's kind of how it has to work for a business to survive and be successful. And you can't do it all yourself.
Exactly. And, for the people who are scared of that financial security aspect of it, if you're working a full-time job, like, you can start something for yourself and you can work on it, when you're not at your full-time job, and you still have that financial security. And then when then you can go down to part-time and do your business part-time. And then, eventually get to the point where you can quit that employee role and run your business full-time.
Yeah, and I think the other example that I give to sometimes people who are afraid to do it is the MBA example. It's kind of like, hey, you could always go and spend 200K on an MBA. I don't know, maybe say 100K on an MBA and not work for a year or 2 years, however long it is.
Yeah.
And there's that. Or you could save up some money as well and start your own business, and you'd probably learn more, the same amount, if not more, by doing it. And sure, an MBA can be great if you want to get into something that traditionally you need an MBA for and can kind of work. But you may just want an experience of trying something on your own to learn about business, to be an entrepreneur, which is kind of the boat that I'm in. And sure, there's a chance that it works out terribly and then I end up going back and working for someone or working at a company, and there's that. Or maybe you end up learning a lot and taking that instead of buying schooling or going back to school, you learn a ton owning your own business, and that's just another strategy really to figure out what your place is and where you are and where you're going.
Exactly. And it honestly, like, that resonates with me 100%, because growing up and being in that school environment, I was that person that I had to learn by experience. And, I could read about it in a book and whatnot, but it would never soak in. It wasn't until, I actually did the experiment or, put those, that knowledge to, like, work, that I would actually retain it. And it's the amount of stuff that I've learned in the last 14, 15 months from running my business, like, is more than I ever got out of school, to be honest.
Yeah. I mean, you can only pretend so much at school. It's all just pretend. You're just pretending things and practicing and whatever. And you're like, hey, I got to go and actually do this eventually so that I really learn it and see that if it actually works, or this is how it actually happens, or if I can actually do it, or the details that you just, when you're pretending, you can't fully appreciate. So I get that. Certainly, and sure, you're a doctor, you need to practice a lot, you need to pretend a lot. Like, there's a lot of downside if you're not good at it. But for some things, especially in the business world, it's fine. You can fail, you can learn without taking big risks. And sometimes you just have to get out there and try it so that you can learn what you need to learn.
Well, exactly. Yeah. And honestly, you learn more from failure than you do from success.
Totally. Yeah. There's this whole now big push shift with COVID-19 towards people working remotely and not needing to be in an office per se. How has that been for you in terms of just being virtual and the whole world kind of taking this giant leap towards doing that?
I'm very grateful for starting my business the time that I did, because it was, just a couple months before the world ended, in a sense. And
changed.
It's changed. And it's, it was hard in the beginning going from an office environment to, working from home. And always having, well, being alone relatively, right? Like that
Yeah.
was something that was really hard because I was always in sales and customer service and stuff like that. So I had interactions with people face to face every day. And, Zoom fatigue is a real thing. And that and it's personal, but it's impersonal at the same time. So that was something that I struggled with in the beginning. I was still able to, go visit my clients and stuff like that. But when COVID hit, I was very nervous because people closed their doors and they shut their wallets and they were, battening down the hatches because they weren't sure what was going to happen.
Yeah.
So I had a list of people who wanted to work with me, and then they're like, you know what, we're gonna wait. We're just gonna wait it out.
Yeah.
So there was a period of 3 months where it was pretty quiet for me. And I was really nervous. But then when I think people realized that, okay, this shift is going to stay, people are going to be working from home, they don't need to be in an office. And helping business owners navigate that shift became a huge part of my business. And, I think for a lot of new businesses, it's actually a benefit because there's not a lot of overhead costs with having employees in an office. They can work from home. You don't have to, rent a space. You don't have to, all these other aspects with it, right?
Yeah.
And I think people tend to actually be more productive when they are working at home than they are in an office space.
What do you think we're going to miss though? Or do you think, especially as people get vaccinated, do you think there will be just as many people going to offices, or do you think there's going to be I talk to people all the time about this, like to what extent is this going to be permanent, and this shift to, hey, people who can work from home do, and it is more common, but do we miss something
Yeah.
from a social perspective and just being able to connect with people that way and see them?
Yeah, I think it'll be a little bit of a boomerang effect where, as soon as like the government tells us, yep, we're good to go, everyone's vaccinated, I think a lot of people will rush to go back to kind of that office environment. But I think it'll also dissipate back where it'll be like 50-50 in a sense where, half of their staff is at home and half of their staff is at an office. And, I think a lot of people are realizing that you don't necessarily need to all be in the same office to get the job done. Obviously, there is some roles that it's necessary for you to be in an office. And those people are still in an office now, with COVID restrictions and everything in place, and being careful. But I think it's it'll be very interesting to see, the next year, 2 years, what happens with it. I know with my dad, like he works at a bank and he's upper management and whatnot. And he's been working from home since this all started. And his team, they're not going back to an office
Yeah,
for probably at least another year.
because they don't need to, and they figured it out,
Well,
and
exactly.
and
They don't
and
need to.
they can see that each other if they need to, right? I mean, you can still do that if for
Yeah.
whatever reason, but you don't necessarily need to the same degree, I think, because we've gotten this push. That's what I think, and there'll be a lot more of this, hey, you go in 2 days a week or 3 days a week kind of thing versus the the 5 days a week thing that we were all sort of doing before, which would be interesting.
Yeah.
That makes the dynamics interesting, I think. And I actually wonder too, with young people, whether that becomes a perk of the job where you can be mobile and remote and just thinking about it differently. Do you think that way, that it's overall kind of good? I mean, you're in your 20s. It's a social time, right? I mean, you kind of want
Yeah.
to be out there meeting people. Do you think you're missing anything though by not kind of being able to just be out in the world and just meeting people naturally? Or do you have any
Um,
strategies for maybe doing that and exercising those muscles those sales muscles, where you
yeah.
just want to be out there and being introduced to new people?
Well, I did experience that, this winter where I was kind of missing that social aspect, and I found a solution. I joined a BNI group,
Yeah.
and I meet with them once a week and network. It's over Zoom. It's to be determined when it goes back into in-person meetings, but I found that little piece that I was missing, that camaraderie of having like a sales team, and that like pat on the back for doing a good job, and but also having access to all of these different people in their network has really opened up quite a few different doors for me. And really, it's kind of forced me to find different avenues of connecting with people in different ways than I would instead of like door knocking, for example, where it's, or even doing kind of that like cold calling aspect. But now it's I find it's actually easier to be personable and reach out to people more authentically, which is very interesting.
Yeah. I actually hear that. I since sort of doing the entrepreneurial thing myself, I sort of felt that there was something missing at times from that. What before was more of the coworker, going out for drinks kind of thing that I sort of didn't have the same way anymore.
Yeah.
And so I started going to these networking. They were more like networking sessions, or it'd just be a bunch of
Mhm.
typically entrepreneurs who would go to an event at a bar, and it's kind of like speed dating really for business
Yeah.
people. And it was, I'm decently shy, a bit of an introvert, and it's a hard thing to keep up for too long. But I actually really enjoyed doing it and just meeting all these other people that I felt were kind of like me, or we had similarities, or that maybe we could help each other, etc. And it wasn't really about networking and per se. It was more just about flexing that skill and muscle of meeting people. And you kind of get better actually at just going up to a random person and saying, or having a conversation, because you can't just have the hey, what do you do, hey, what do you do conversation, because you're just going to
Yeah.
have to do that over and over again. You end up getting pretty good at making it interesting and saying different things and just breaking the ice in a different way, which I think just is a skill to learn. And just but yeah, for me it was just nice. All this means, I think, by going more online, is that we'll come up with ways to still connect with people and see people in person however we want to, and
Yeah.
probably make the most of that time when we do.
Exactly. And one of the things that I would practice is anytime that I was out, you know, getting my hair done, or, any of those kind of appointments, and going into businesses and stuff like that, I would practice my elevator pitch. And,
Yeah.
if I would see something in their business that I think that I could improve, I would just say, hey, like, this is who I am. This is what I do. I would love to help you. And that was something that I would just practice. And I loved it because it was always you'd always kind of get that like confidence high after.
Yeah.
And and then you just drive home, listening to your music, just singing along because you're in a good mood. Like, yeah, I rocked it today.
Yeah. Yeah. It's
Yeah.
good. It's a weird, good feeling where you kind of accomplish something that is a little bit hard and put yourself out
Yeah.
there a little bit to get it done. It's nice. If you could go back to your maybe it's high school self, and give yourself advice, or tell you something, what do you think that would be about, specifically about your career and what you should focus on in the path here?
Yeah, when it's actually funny because in my high school yearbook for my grade 12 year, my quote was, "It's not about where you end up, it's about the journey getting there." And that is something that is, I have it as a phone screen. I have it on a sticky note in so many places, and it's okay to not know where you're going, but
Mhm.
to appreciate the journey there and all the things that you learn is, yeah, that's honestly, when I look back at it and who I was as a person, I was very much an introvert and shy, and I was very quiet. I wish I could tell myself to get out of that kind of mindset quicker,
Yeah.
and, push myself to be more vocal and find my voice a little bit sooner. Yeah, that's honestly, I think the only thing that I would say to myself is, it's okay to not know where you're going, but it's important to have a voice and to speak up.
Yeah, I that especially as you get older, you have more control and you can put yourself in situations where you're more comfortable and
Hmm.
it's easier, i.e., just staying at home or just saying I'm busy or saying no to things. Like, right, you can kind of do that especially as you get older more and more. But pushing yourself can actually be is really what you need to do in some ways, and doesn't have to be a huge amount, but just in little ways to get out there and do some of these things that you know you should do but don't want to do. It's kind of
Yeah,
it's just
exactly.
that getting out of your comfort zone a little bit is huge. And I think, yeah, when I was younger, probably stressed out more about that than
Yeah.
I should have. And I don't know though that there's anything I could have said to change that that younger Greg. I probably had to go, like you
Yeah.
said, I probably had to go through that the way I did. Otherwise, I wouldn't have ended up here. But yeah, I don't know. It does. You do get used to it, and you do, I think, improve, and you do get more comfortable with things, and it does actually feel really good. And along that point, this is, I think, in my last question is for you and your goals for the business, and where you want to take it, and where you think your career goes, because you're young, you've got a lot going on. How do you see it? How far do you think? What do you want to achieve with this in the future?
Yeah, ever since from a very young age, I've always set some really high goals for myself and always been really hard on myself too. But in starting my business, I've definitely done some self-reflection on how to, you know, do better goal setting and set achievable goals.
Yeah.
And seeing how far my business has come now, it's for me, it's I want to be able to reach as many small business owners and entrepreneurs that, are kind of in that growth phase, or they're just starting out and they're struggling because they don't know how to, create a website or stuff like that. And I want to be able to be accessible to those people. I have clients all over North America, which I'm so grateful for. And for myself, like being able to have grown my team to 5 women now, I want to keep growing, and I want to have a big team so that we're able to bring in, more of those people who are looking to grow their business. And for me, I love helping people. That's what it comes down to. Making money is great, but for me, what makes me happy and gives me the fulfillment is seeing my clients succeed and getting the results that they want. That is ultimately my biggest goal, is to help as many people as possible who are wanting to make that transition from an employee role to owning their own business.
Yeah. Okay. If people want to learn more, follow you, what's the best way?
Well, I have my Instagram account. My handle is at Limitless Impact, or you can check out my website at www.limitlessimpact.ca. And I have a contact form there, or you can just DM me on Instagram. And I'm an open book. Like, I have people reach out to me all the time who, are looking to make that shift and they just want to talk and ask questions. And I love doing that for people.
Great. Well,
Yeah.
I appreciate the conversation. Thank you so much for joining me on the podcast. And yeah, I hope you continued success in the business. Sounds awesome, and
Thank
it
you.
was great learning about it. So.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much for having me. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Well, thank you for listening, and I hope you enjoyed that conversation with me and Brianna. She is young, but you can't tell, or I couldn't tell, anyways. What she's doing is really cool. So, if there's a guest that you think that would be great for the podcast, you can go to lifetimeatwork.com and suggest yourself or this person, and I would love to try to get them on the show. And until then, don't worry, be happy.